Principal funding for Rights and Wrongs has been provided by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, Open Society Institute, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Global Vision presents Rights and Wrongs, Human Rights Television.
Hello, I'm Charlene Hunter-Gault, and you're watching Rights and Wrongs. Our focus this week, Rwanda, after the genocide.
In history of Rwanda, the church was respected. It was the first time in the history of Rwanda, nothing at all was respected.
Many people want to get married today. Maybe because after the rain comes the sun. After the war, life starts again.
By now, the world well knows the horrific consequences of the decade-long strife between members of the Hutu and Tutsi ethnic groups in the Central African Republic of Rwanda. On April 6, 1994, a suspicious plane crash claimed the life of its president, and Rwanda exploded in an orgy of unsurpassed violence. Hutu extremists went on a murderous rampage, slaughtering anyone suspected of being a Tutsi. What followed was a human rights disaster of extraordinary proportions. The savage genocide ultimately claimed up to 1 million lives and created more than 2 million refugees. In the aftermath of the genocide, Tutsi rebels, known as the Rwandan Patriotic Front, attacked the Hutu forces and took over Rwanda. Millions of Hutus fled the country, creating vast refugee camps in neighboring Zaire, Tanzania, and Burundi almost overnight. Cholera and dysentery ran rampant in the crowded and unsanitary camps, particularly in Goma, Zaire, where more than 1 million refugees fled in just 3 days. International relief organizations worked around the clock to provide food, water, and medicine. UNICEF field worker Christian Clark.
The problems have been enormous. 500 people are dying a day in all the camps, adults, children, and that's down from 1,500 just 3 weeks ago.
The Rwandan conflict also created the largest group of unaccompanied children ever. Without parents, these children were especially vulnerable.
Children have been separated from their parents, children who are orphaned. We estimate there might be as many as 80,000 children in Zaire alone who are displaced.
After the rebel victory, both the new Rwandan government and the United Nations began to encourage the repatriation of refugees. One obstacle to this goal was the large number of landmines left over from the war. Canadian Major General Romeo Dallaire commanded the UN forces in Rwanda.
They attract the kids, they attract even adults to fiddle with them. We're getting 5 or 6 cases a day of people, with legs blown off and arms and so on.
Another problem with repatriation, Hutu extremists in the camps are using violence and intimidation to prevent refugees from returning home. Extremist control of the refugee camps has caused concern among many relief groups. Dr. Alain Destex was the director of Doctors Without Borders.
The reason is that we consider that in this situation, in the camps, the humanitarian relief effort alone is doing more harm than good, because it strengthens the powers of the former killers. And it makes that the relief efforts allow them to prepare the next war and the next genocide.
The new Rwandan government is arresting 1,500 people every week. Many are accused of genocide. Crammed into already overflowing jails, these prisoners join thousands waiting to stand trial. But the trials are a long way off. Rwandan Justice Minister Alphonse Nkubito.
The judicial system is so amputated that it cannot function normally. We lack human resources. We lack equipment. All our infrastructure has been damaged. In a way, we are starting from scratch.
The lack of a judicial system prompted the international community to call on the United Nations War Crimes Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. The tribunal has added the prosecution of Rwandan war crimes to its mandate. Its new field office in Kigali has identified 400 suspects who may be indicted for genocide. Colin Port directs the investigation for the tribunal in Rwanda.
We will primarily go for the leaders, those principally responsible for the genocide and crimes against humanity. The International Tribunal will only try a very, very small number of people. Most of the trials and most of the guilt or innocence will be decided by the Rwandese themselves.
Other problems persist. Neighboring Burundi, a country with similar ethnic makeup and tensions, is on the verge of exploding. Despite a UN arms ban, Hutu militia in the refugee camps outside Rwanda have been receiving weapons from unknown sources. There are problems at refugee camps inside Rwanda as well. During a recent attempt to close down the Kibeho camp in southern Rwanda, government soldiers opened fire on a crowd of refugees, killing 2,000 people. The incident was condemned by the international community. The crisis in Rwanda continues. Even the presence of the United Nations has failed to stem gross human rights violations. One problem, the UN Human Rights Field Operation is short of funds. As a result, as the crisis mounts, UN human rights monitors in Rwanda may soon be forced to cut back their work. But there are pockets of hope in Rwanda today. Many people there are beginning to rebuild their lives. Increasingly, part of that healing process includes marriage. Recently, Rights and Wrongs attended a wedding at the Cathedral of Saint-Michel in Kigali. It was one way to reaffirm life and a belief in the future, in a land where no one is untouched by death.
The militia and soldiers broke into the church and threw in grenades. After that, they hacked the people with machetes, cutting them into pieces. Those who lived survived because whenever someone was cut with a machete, they fell down, sometimes on top of those who had not been cut.
During the Rwandan conflict, this church in Intarama and hundreds like it became slaughterhouses. More than 600 men, women, and children died here. Tade and Zomba found the bodies.
Whenever I reach here, I immediately remember what happened. 3 of my family are here: my brother, my sister, and her child. These bodies should not be buried. They should be left here to be seen by everybody. Because whoever did this was an animal, and such an act should never be forgotten.
In history of Rwanda, people had been attacked. That's not the first time. But up till last year, when they got to a church, the church was respected. It was the first time in history of Rwanda, nothing at all was respected.
One year after the genocide, at the Cathedral de Saint-Michel in the Rwandan capital of Kigali.
Many people want to get married today. There are several reasons. Maybe because after the rain comes the sun. After the war, life starts again.
Father Innocent Goshede.
Here in Saint Michel's parish, there are many young people who could not marry during the war. Now is a favorable time, in time of peace. In peace, we see new things, new ways of life.
A ghost town during the war, Kigali is full of life again. People here are anxious to forget the past. But Chantal Luwamurera cannot forget what happened last April.
President Habyarimana was killed at night. Early the next morning, we ran away because we didn't want the militia to kill us. The following day, the militia found us at the church where we ran. They had machetes and hand grenades and killed many people. My sister died right in front of me. But I managed to run away and hide in the priest's house.
German missionary Father Otto Meyer.
We had about 500 people in this church. When we had been attacked, they were shooting the church from the side, and people were running away in total panic. The army had been on this tree, and I had to go like this and open in the night this door, this door, not making any noise, because they could hear us. If they hear us, the 14 people in, they were dead, of course. You see the parts where the roofing is coming down, people had been hiding away on the, above the ceiling. A genocide, killings like which happened in Rwanda, you can't understand it. It's more than you can reason. People are crazy, I am crazy, all are crazy.
Many of my relatives and family died there, and many friends. On the 14th of April, the RPF came and rescued me.
Chantal met a rebel soldier named Laurent Muganza. A few months later, he asked her to marry him.
It's God that brought her to me, nobody else. To build a home is an obligation. Even if you lost your own wife or your husband, you have to marry another one. One shouldn't remain alone.
Chantal once had a family of 12. Now, just a brother and sister remain.
My name is Kazelda Mukataganzwa, and I am Chantal's maid of honor. Originally, I was not supposed to be, but the one who was to be the maid of honor was killed. Chantal wasn't close to anybody else, except for me. These days, people don't have any relatives or friends anymore. Now people are getting married to enlarge their families. A lot of things happened to me. I don't have a mother or a father anymore. Not even a husband. And I have 4 children.
Chantal's aunt, Miriam Mukarego.
My whole family died. I'm the only one remaining. That is why I will be Chantal's mother at the wedding. It is very painful, and we had so much, but we just have to keep quiet. Because you cannot bring back what God has already taken away. The young ones will have more children. They are our future.
Rwanda is a farming culture. In this spirit, Chantal's wedding day begins with a traditional Rwandan dowry ceremony.
We want Chantal in our family. Thank you very much.
But my daughter cannot go in a home with no cows. So if you're a poor man, you better say so right now.
Ladislas Semana and Leopold Ruasamanzi are the new family elders.
What I can say about Rwanda is that all families lost people. Of course, the politicians had a hand in all of this.
The old regime did all this. The genocide was planned. That is obvious. These are political things that we cannot talk about and finish. People have killed each other. We cannot pretend the next year things will be normal.
Now there is more of a need to marry than ever. Many people are gone. We are starting from zero.
The genocide has destroyed families. We have widows without children. We have orphans. We have girls who have known all the distress in the world, who have been raped. Marriage today becomes an alliance between families, a link which brings together both survivors of the war and people who come from outside. It is a message to society that we must live in unity.
I, Chantal Wamurera, take you, Laurent Muganza, to be my husband, in good times and in bad. I will love you and respect you forever and ever, until death do us part.
At the end of the ceremony, 3 children are baptized, including Chantal's 6-year-old daughter, Karine. This symbolic rebirth has new resonance in Rwanda. The wedding was organized by Chantal's neighbor, Joseph Interushwa.
This is my house. This was the effect of a bomb, that hole. And it landed on my head, here. There was no hospital, no doctor. I had a friend who had a pharmacy. And then he gave me some small medicine, only for cleaning. The Rwandese army was sitting here, at this house. The RPA was sitting there, on those streets. I was between the two fronts. I just thought, I have 5 children. I can't go out. If I go out, we will be killed, all of us. So I told them, you stay here. We will die together or survive together. And we survived together. This lady died. This boy died. That boy died. That girl died. The whole of the left here, they died. So everyone knows what is suffering, what it means. In terms of having lost members or friends, you can get angry. You can refuse to support what happened, but those people will not come back again. So you have to be realistic.
I am very happy to see that despite the efforts of the militia to finish us completely, we have managed to survive and get together and make new families. I am very happy to get married. It helps me to forget what I went through and what I saw, although I cannot forget everything.
I don't want to keep making war. I want to take a break and have some peace of mind and not carry a gun every day. During the war, we never put down our guns. To get this ring on your finger and baptize a child, what can you compare such things with?
You're watching Rights and Wrongs, the television magazine of human rights with Charlene Hunter-Gault.
What happened in Rwanda raises many questions about the root causes of genocide and its effects, not only in Africa, but throughout the world. Questions about ethnic conflict, justice, reconciliation, peace, and truth. Here with us to explore these topics, Kenneth Roth, Executive Director of Human Rights Watch. Ken Roth, what kind of recourse is there in the international arena for the kinds of crimes we've seen in Rwanda and other places?
Well, up until a year or two ago, the only recourse was to the international human rights movement, which could use the exposure of these crimes, the condemnation of them, the appeal to governments to impose economic pressure on the perpetrators to try to penalize those who committed mass murder, for example. But recently, the prospect has emerged that these killers might actually be brought to justice by the international community. We need to look to the international community because often the perpetrators of these crimes are the same national authorities who would ordinarily bring these people to justice at the local level. So we need to look beyond local prosecutors, beyond the local courts, to the international arena to make sure that crimes of this magnitude cannot be committed with impunity.
Is there any evidence that international law and these international tribunals have any real effect?
I think that the effect of the new international tribunals that have been established for the former Yugoslavia and for Rwanda can have a potentially revolutionary effect for the human rights movement. They already are investigating the crimes, and in the case of the former Yugoslavia, several indictments have been issued. The next step is to try to get the killers into the dock, to actually bring them to trial. But even if for the moment they escape justice, the mere fact that there is an indictment out for them, that they have to spend the rest of their lives as international pariahs, fearing arrest at any moment, is a tremendous step forward and an indication that the rule of law can be applied even to the most heinous crimes.
Is impunity ever justified, you think, in situations like Rwanda and Bosnia where the crimes have been so heinous?
There is no practical way that everyone who engaged in the killing of 500,000 Tutsis is going to be brought to trial. But what you can do is to go after the orchestrators of the genocide, the people who armed the militia and directed them to initiate the slaughter. Because I think that one thing you learn in places like Rwanda or Bosnia is that genocide is not a spontaneous reaction. It's not the spontaneous outbreak of age-old hatreds, but it's something that governmental or political leaders direct. And so if you want to stop it in the future, it's essential that you make it clear to those leaders that they will not get away with mass murder, that they will be brought to account.
As you know, so many of the nations that have been devastated by wars in the past few years are now struggling with how to strike a balance between reconciliation and justice. Are there any models out there that you can talk to us about?
Well, first, I think it's important to point out that there is not necessarily a tension between reconciliation and justice. Indeed, I would contend that the most effective way to achieve reconciliation is by establishing justice, by making clear to the people who have been the victims of atrocities that they don't have to seek revenge by taking the law into their own hands, but rather that the state or the international community will make sure that the rule of law is applied by bringing their abusers to justice.
Are there any models out there that are working where this is worked for the people?
Ethiopia today is a place where there is a very systematic effort to bring the murderers of the Mengistu regime to trial, and indeed many of them are in detention and trials are about to go underway. Even in a country like El Salvador, where there was not justice in the sense of people being brought to trial, there at least was a modicum of justice in that the killers, in fact the 100 senior commanders of the Salvadoran army who presided over the disappearances and the torture of the last decade, they all lost their jobs. They no longer represent the Salvadoran state. And that form of discipline is an important step toward justice, and I think it really has to be held up as an important success story.
Is there any way to prevent these so-called crimes against humanity?
Well, fortunately, there's much talk these days about the importance of preventive action or preventive diplomacy, because there is wide recognition, for example, in Rwanda, that the international community spent millions, if not billions of dollars as a humanitarian effort after the fact to help the refugees fleeing Rwanda, but they were wholly ineffective in stopping the genocide itself. And I think that just in economic terms, there's a recognition that if you start earlier to address the problem, it'll be easier to address. But in order to put some content into these vague promises of preventive action, it's necessary to analyze what were the causes of the genocide. And in that sense, you really need to look at the concrete human rights violations that turn ethnic tensions into ethnic violence. Those can be targeted and stopped early, in significant part by promising justice. And that is the way, I think, in the long run of preventing the outbreak of these disasters that we've seen in Bosnia, Rwanda, and elsewhere.
Well, Ken Roth, thank you for bringing at least some good news.
Thank you.
We welcome viewer responses and your suggestions. Please write us, or you can reach us via email at The Well, an online service connected to the internet. I'm Charlene Hunter-Gault. Thank you for watching Rights and Wrongs.
Principal funding for Rights and Wrongs has been provided by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, Open Society Institute, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Rights and Wrongs welcomes your written comments and suggestions. You can also order a transcript for $5 or a video cassette for $24.95 by writing to the Global Center, P.O. Box 311, Radio City Station, New York, New York 10101. Send checks or money orders only. Credit card holders call 1-800-541-2535.